I sit on this bed in the afternoon, just after our lunch, and try to get onto paper some of the ideas which are in my head. Right now, I'm reminded this morning of how writers have never had it so good as they do in the 21st century. In the 16th century, all the way through to the latter part of the 28th century, publishing a book was a very limited thing to do. I think that very few of the books which were published during that time ever had much readership. In fact, I think that the vast majority of the literary and artistic work which was done during that period is slowly decaying away in the basement of the local library and museum. I have heard this often: the lifeblood of history, its main meat and metal, is stored away in the basements and cellars and attics of such places. What we can see in the gallery at the museum doesn't really begin to represent the heart of the time. But then there arrived the internet to our society. Now, even the humblest of written or artistic effort can find at least a few readers or viewers or listeners. As such, will at least be represented in the daily recent uploads digest. So, anyone who wishes to publish and be really read can do so. This is that which I'm shown, the small digest of gradually advancing publications. Whoever is interested in these topics can easily search and find my work, which is so much more of an immediate exchange than that with physical books and recordings. Unless you've got real money and can make an enormous investment in professional recording and engineering of your sound, or as in professional editors and producers and promoters marketing of your book for you, the author, you'll never sell many copies at all. I mean, maybe no more than 100 or 200 copies. Most music and literature was not financially profitable for the author or writer. They never earned a dime. But now, readers and listeners can be reached right where they are, for little expense, even with good free content. And there will be an exclusive audience for most any publication, anywhere in the world. So, this to me is the face value of the World Wide Web. It's at least a way to realize the amateur, independent, and not-for-profit publisher's dreams, with little cost. So, this is what this essay is about. This being the somewhat of a pep rally for microtechnology, keeping esteem for the designers, makers, and builders of our devices and appliances, and celebrating the self-produced and published who have benefited from these. At any rate, these are some thoughts to begin my new Part 6 to the Impromptu Profundity audiobook. I thought about it, and realized that the primary reason that I get down these thoughts, any thoughts, will be because they will be running around in my head, like giant dinosaurs, on walking trails. At wit's end, I will finally just write them down, so as to build, hopefully, some usable equity. Because I always wanted to be a writer, and to know this purpose, this sense of meaning, that comes along with partnering with the heavenly, ascended inhabitants, above and within my mind. So, you can see the main reasons I write. Firstly, the thoughts are there, and they're exciting and exhilarating. Secondly, my desire has always been to write. So, you'll see, the well-aged and matured writer's path will be what you'll eventually find, if you persevere. At any rate, these are just some thoughts. The biggest blessing in my life, right now, is being given these good thoughts, which are useful in starting Part 6 of this audiobook. These ideas will, hopefully, be a nest egg, which I'll return to across this whole time period, and which will guide and encourage my daily walking as I move this book further along to its eventual completion. Anyways, I've been thinking on ways to mitigate the numbing blindnesses that run down the middle of my insides. This is my weathered vein distortion, and, for sure, it always lets me know that I'm in fact alive. I'm not a ghost. I have to deal with the pain and blindness of life with this weathered vein. But there's a good way to see past this pain. Just see such as something of a mess of hair, which runs down the entire length of my esophagus. If you want to lessen your inner blindness and darkness in your inner life, just see this mess of hair as gradually pointing yourself into consciousness with all of the sentience in and about your mind, proportional to how well you can see the strands just passing on through, breaking up and dissolving, as in a clogged pipe that finally clears. Anyways, I am finding some good relief for my heart and soul, regardless of any problems associated with some of my artistic pieces. Perhaps this visualization is a bit far-fetched, but such might work for some. At any rate, if a cat had a fur ball in his gullet, he would want it to come up, or pass behind, wouldn't he? At any rate, these are some thoughts, this morning. After I get the necessary morning rites behind myself, I'll get back to my apartment, and get a bite to eat, and some writing done with my external Bluetooth keyboard. That should get me along the ways. Well, we should have mostly sunshine today. At least, our radar animation doesn't show anything to speak of. It will be good to stay indoors, and stay cool. We'll be glad, some writing sessions, to just move it along. Never mind the eccentricity. Today is Friday, the third one in July, this year. I sit inputting these thoughts into this smart device's word processor, and considering the blessings of the time this island, I'm somewhat grateful for the immediate goodness of this morning. Having this writing to work on, especially, means that someone, the odds, are on my side in this day. At the very least, I'll have some equity to show for the time. So, counting my blessings is a good thing to do. There are so many advantages we have going for us. Clear weather, a good neighborhood, professional staff and management and administrative people that are well above par. Everyone is with the game, there are no problems to speak of. At any rate, your writing may seem so mundane, but I've always felt that there's an unspoken commonplace vernacular, which is just about ordinary life. Our everyday relationships and times. Well, I've just recently found some new music, and so this is something to study, while I'm trying to get this writing further along. One doesn't always know a thing, until he or she hears or sees such, mixed in with the general, common fold. An excellent text reading, or artwork, or musical album is one thing, but getting to hear such played back, with the others in your library, is just the cat's meow. This is what it's all about, if you ask me. The standout features, in a piece of music, or live performance, might be its sense of movement, or in its talking, and vociferating, in general. Still other pieces, in your library, will have a much more tranquil and quiet mood about them. Less talkative. At certain junctures, in any list, of 10 or more pieces, you'll somewhat tend to find recurrent similitudes, from project to project. The more you know, about the designs, and archetypes which you find percolating, and often repeating, throughout our culture of arts and literature, the more easily you'll be able to interpret modern musics and literature, and more accepting of your own. So, there is definitely a well-trodden path, if you ask me. This which encompasses and includes the same ideas, and themes, and designs as have always been, through time. Knowledge is power, and we have the keys to understanding, in our lessons of history, and in our artistic and literary criticism. The understanding of the recurrent features found from project to project can be cachet and keys into the full-fledged appreciation of jazz. For instance, is piece 1 any different from piece 2, and how do, say, 5, 6, and 7 match up to rhythms and moods found comparatively, or from other artists, or projects? You see, it might be this way, to be from here, and another, different, but similar way to be from over there. The patterns are there, if you familiarize yourself with enough music, and art, and literature, to be able to read the flows of a diverse range of self-expression. So, these are just a few thoughts. I get them down, in this word processor, and get on my way. Well, our morning is getting along, now, so I'll get up, and get a drink of cold water, and return a bit later, after our lunch, now, and I'll come up with a quick flourish to finish the end of this writing. Our past week, for myself, had a lot of self-conservation, and curating focus. I managed to get together a comprehensive set of everything artistic, or musical, or literary which I'd come up with, and been given over the recent 12 months. I've put together a lot more, in a year, than I would have ever thought possible, as a 30-year-old. Keeping 1 year's retrospective in an archival place of its own, the nice cardboard storage container, with a hinge top, lets my mind and spirit better see what I'm working on and with, right now. Uploading set of just this year's work brings order and meaning to the work, which I'm just always doing. Not just this one year alone, but any given year. I'll now have this more comprehensive overview into the future. So, to me, this has been the worth of this time. Well, these thoughts about conclude this first posting into new part 6 of this Impromptu Profundity audiobook. I'll finish them up and send along your way now. Have a good weekend. All for now, Greg. Tilda sitting down this morning to get a few thoughts into this word processor memory. I'm considering how, after a bad natural disaster, there will be some of us who inevitably appear to get caught up in self-blaming. I will have seen enough of our ordinary, weak, human ways to know that these corporeal, mortal ways of seeing often enter into, consciously or unconsciously, an ecology of blaming. In truth, no one knows what will come to be in the future, other than the continued existence of that which remains flexible and adaptive, and that which is set in stone. But there will always be the recurrent thought, which I like to express as the saying, fate is no respecter of persons. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away, is another. In fact, there's no really good reason to think that fate or circumstances will or won't affect any one person at all in particular. Or, that we'll all just stay always ahead of that world of sorrow and self-blaming, and won't feel the pain. We, I think, use statistical analysis to give us an estimation of what we are up against as 21st century writers and musicians. As the general rule, we would want, I think, to tell the people in our lives that we love them, because this is known by so few. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Would you be ready to go if you had to? There will always be survivors as well, and we should be grateful if we're among them, and not let the troubles of our modern times discourage us or diminish our morale. We're all among the survivors thus far. If we're reading these words presently, consciously, I'm just getting down a few ideas to see just what is in my mind today. If I'm tending to vegetate in a time such as this one, when concerns such as these seem to mount, then I'll start a personal work path, such as this writing, or a musical project, which affords myself a somewhat better future than the time, right now, would show of itself. Because, as I said before, after awful natural disasters, those poor souls who are in a culture, or ecology of sin, such as tobacco and alcohol users and retailers, may be challenged, morally, and hence will tend to somewhat consolidate blaming in themselves. By writing, or playing and recording my instrument, I'll then at least have something to show for the time. It may help to remember the saying about how any given morning might indicate the performing of certain mundane tasks. This, I think, should be seen as a normal part of a successful life walk, or avocation. Such can be, for example, a grasping of the reins, which, if the good Lord allows you to do so, permits your higher mind to have say and bearing in your future, allowing for on-ramps into understanding and meaning and growth. You'll remember this as long as you've got the notebook and pen, or smart device and word processor in your possession. The Lord being willing, you'll be someone who always knows how to therapeutically work through issues in your life. Such things as accidents and disasters, weather disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, and civil or criminal misdeeds. Any paranoid or self-delusional thinking caused by the ambiguities around these events can be handled by the good spirits on high, and you'll find yourself much farther along than you would have been otherwise. At any rate, we here have just had our lunch and our noon medicines across at our office, and gotten back to our apartments to start looking again at taking this writing farther along into this afternoon. Our weather is beautiful and hot, with sun expected to continue hereabouts into the midweek, with some rain and thunder in the second half. I'm sitting here on this low bed and listening to an audio CD on my personal player, and inputting these thoughts. Now, it's cool inside and stays at around 72 or 3 degrees. But I wear layers against the chilly refrigeration. I always had sensitive skin areas, and I rarely like indoor air conditioning. It bothers me to the point of my wearing warm layers, which trap my body heat against my skin. That's what I like more than anything else. Indoor air conditioning, experienced without a good warm coat, is just not comfortable for me at all. So, I'll always try to have a coat nearby. We're at the middle afternoon now, and I've, after considerable efforts and rewriting, gotten the first half of this article presentable, and so I continue on into the finish. This will be the second article in the 6th part of this Impromptu Profundity audiobook. This is the third Sunday in July this year, and I sit inputting these thoughts into this word processor on my smart device, with this external Bluetooth keyboard. This apartment is clean, with mopped linoleum floors, and wiped surfaces. My bed clothes, and other laundry are all clean, and our grasses around this building are neatly trimmed by a landscaping service. Our bills are all paid, my health is excellent. That which stays flexible, and adaptive, through change, and that which is set in stone. Both of these are seen to outlast change. Such ideas as this word present prominently in my writing back when we went through the first decade of our Christian millennium, and I recall them now and then. The more contemporary concept, for myself, is in how our glottis, our linguistic faculty, mouth and tongue, can be localized and squared away by imagining gently sloping on-ramps and off-ramps at that center. This is a calming, relaxing meditation, and I'm glad to include it in this essay. With this, some of the most common ailments and disruptive thoughts which come at me daily, probably attributable to my carnivorous diet, such as the sense that my teeth are too sharp or harmful in some way. Ways I blame myself are mitigated with this visualization of a gently sloping on or off ramp. Linguistically, I hope you see how this is an improvement in my quality of life. At any rate, these thoughts appear to be slowly winding down now, so I'll think about wrapping them up and adding them in with the others. Have a good news week. All for now, Greg. Postscript. I was shown a little saying last week, which read like, those people who are already fervent, naturally, are called religious. Those people who live and fall, and come back from their fall with renewed fervency, we call spiritualists. Isn't this interesting? I think such speaks to certain things we see in daily life, so I pass it along to you. Now, all for now, Greg. Tilda. I've written before about how, when art gets particularly deep, or delves into ambiguity, or gray areas, our mortal wits may easily get overextended, and just struggle to find the right meaning for the piece. But, someone once told me of how our great God in his heavens uses our deep art, and expressions which are of ambiguity, and grayness, as tokens, and computational tools, whereby he or she thinks, and assesses matters of an intergalactic nature. Our planet Earth, I have heard it said, is a greenhouse, an incubator, a think tank, a fragile ecosystem, the jewel of creation, the nexus. Some artwork asks of us that we consider alternative readings on our universe's consensus reality. What is our life on Earth, if not a proving ground, a sandbox, a notebook? Perhaps our mortal lives are chrysalis, and the real super existence is above and beyond this plane, outside of our linear views of time and space. And this specific view, this of the sixth dimension, is kept quiet, and the terms of planetary life stay more or less the same over millennia, as a kind of stage play, which, when you know how to tap into such, sometimes turns up real wonders, but which always is a home, a proving ground, and haven, for spirit. Perhaps, just beyond mortal perception, lies a land populated with life, and with imperishable starlight, and the musics of the spheres. The Earth might well be an ideal dancing ground, and a playing ground, where life from throughout the universe moves about, as hyperspatial, higher dimensional presences. Christ, Mohammed, the Buddha, Jehovah, Lao Tzu. These are some local celebrities. And maybe even more importantly, the method to the madness, in this universe, is, I think, the binary means of communication. And binary technologies are an entrance into a new age. Our most precious resource is our water. And such binary local intelligentsia brokers, or negotiates, using this equity, this water, the basic building block of life, as we know it, as our bargaining chip. Hence, the name of our new age, Aquarius, aka the water era. Our planet Earth, with our digitally equipped humankind at the helm. At any rate, the time is just after 10, and I showered, and gotten myself to this writing couch. I'll hopefully get some very progressive thinking into this word processor memory, and thusly expand my part 6 of this Impromptu Profundity audiobook, was this third written article in the set. We should be able to accomplish this goal. I'm really enjoying this gradually sloping off-ramp type of visualization, and getting myself along into this good future, and myself off into sleep. Maybe I'm remembering, at last, the spatio-spiritual powers which can come by imagining subtle topographic gradients, gradually sloping up, or gradually sloping down, and variants that rough them both, especially at the zone of our teeth. We can come into richer, more full communion with our own higher mind and consciousness. Does anyone else see this? Isn't this a returning, in a way, to all which we are, and can be, at the heart of our consciousness? At any rate, this thinking has been very liberating for myself, just recently, and I'm grateful and relieved to have gotten such into this computer's memory, and further produced this part. Well, it's early Monday morning, the third one in July, this year. I'm up before 3, and have gotten some internet browsing done, and settled back into work on this writing. When I can kind of watch, and keep track of, the subtle, nuanced gradient changes, to the topographic ocean. We can't tell, if the ground is gently sloping up, or more steeply inclined, or if it's a gentle downslope. Isn't this like the control panel instrument used to keep an aircraft's wings level with the horizon? ... so that our flight path stays straight, and doesn't bank to the right or left? Well, I've stayed straight this morning, and I haven't ditched yet. I hope that my reader knows the sublime times which are to be found in the early morning hours. If you've got reading to do, then this is the ideal time. Long before anyone else is up from bed. I've figured out the meaning of the unfolding of a few mysteries this morning. Beyond a stretch, visualization is one thing, but when coming into understanding, consider the horizontal stabilizer. Well, this article appears to be winding down to its conclusion now, so I'll add it with the others, and send along your way. Now, all for now, Greg. Till then we have another sunny, hot Monday. Our high temperature today is expected to be in a range of 92 degrees Fahrenheit. I've taken care of the morning's responsibilities, cleaned and wiped down surfaces in our kitchen, which weren't much, gotten my medicines, and returned back to our apartment, where I quickly swept the floors throughout the apartment, and emptied some trash bins. And then sat down on this bed, with my CD player, and headphones, and my writing gear, and scanned back across this morning's ongoings, and counted my blessings, as usual. My country is a land where being different, or unique is really a benefit. Light detection and ranging shows a way from an orbital perspective, telling the subtlest topographic elevation differences from one square meter to the next. This technique is used to detect sinking or rising areas of land from cameras in Earth orbit. I've read a lot on the internet about this precise elevation change detection. Now it has found coastal areas, especially in Florida, where the ground is incrementally sinking. This problem sometimes causes buildings' foundations to tilt, and in some cases, to cave in. This elevation measuring technique, LIDAR, as it is called, I have read, has detected bulges and ground swells happening all over North America, as well as the sinking of some areas, especially along the coastal lands. The coastal sinking is said to be attributable to rising sea levels, flooding increasingly more sublands with brine. The rises in surface elevation have been happening as well. North America isn't the only continent that has geologically active lands in places. These are all over the world. In particular, my mind thinks of the Ring of Fire, a bunch of seismic and volcanic sources which basically encompass the Pacific Ocean basin. I don't know if I'd be wrong to say that these are where most of the planet's seismic and volcanic activity and events happens, because there are seismic and volcanic hotspots all over the planet. Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Japan. These are seismically and volcanically active. In February of 2023, there was an awfully destructive, deadly earthquake in Turkey. More than 60,000 people died. I've been noticing, in my mind, and daily meditations, while writing, that the land, or the surface is being noted, especially, whether it's sloping upward, or downward. The highway department calls this the gradient of the climb, or of the descent. The steepness of the gradient means trucks will have to get a running start and gear down to climb such a hill. I just keep thinking about this gently sloping on-ramp or off-ramp. The gentler the gradient is, the easier is the walking. For instance, hikers know this. It's not hard to hike 10 or 12 miles in a day. However, if some of the hiking is up steep mountainsides, the hiking gets more difficult. Steep descents are just as bad. At any rate, the most recent story I read about my part of the world, close to the Appalachian Mountains, is that parts of the Appalachian Range has only recently been bulging, rising in elevation by as much as 12 centimeters in places. The story I read suggested that the Native American legend of the mountains being a sleeping giant might be pertinent to consider. Magma wellings occur in fissures, where the magma can work its way up toward the surface crust. Those of us in this part of the world have always been blessed with what's thought of as a geologically dormant region. However, the Mueller fault system is moved now and then. I don't think that we have had a bad earthquake in the east in 200 years or more. But this new information about some of the Appalachian areas bulging upward in elevation, measured by the light detection and ranging from Earth orbit, is upsetting. Most of us have never seen magma in person. We would not care to. Additionally, the scientists in the story I read were saying that there are numerous explanations for what could be causing the ground to rise in places. One of the explanations is that this is attributable to plate tectonics. The Appalachian Ranges are formed from something called a subduction zone, where the eastward migrating plates of North America's mainlands come into collision with some westward plate tectonics, probably a gradual migrating of the Atlantic plates westward. At the point where these two directions of rock travel collide, the ground buckles, and has formed the Appalachian Ranges. Some of the plates get thrust down beneath the surface, while other rock plates get buckled upwardly in elevation. This movement of the elevation in this area might be caused by normal plate tectonics. A collision of two plates, which is buckling up and raising the elevation significantly. At any rate, I sit writing these thoughts as much to quell my mental illness symptoms as anything. My migraines are so bad just recently. You don't always have the strength to rise above, to quote the song. And my own ramp and off-ramp visualization is having only limited effect on lessening these migraines. So, I've covered in this article the recent meditations, and the way I'm feeling today. Only halfway through the article, did I figure out that the geological news about rising elevations in places is probably the underlying reason for the upslope and downslope meditations. I'm just reluctant to say that the ground is unstable. Just like I'm extremely hesitant to say the sky is falling. One doesn't want to be alarmist. I just think we've got time on our hands, and I'll sit down with my word processor, or notebook and pen, and see what, if anything, arises linguistically. At the very least, I'll have something to show for the time spent. This is my main reason for writing in stream of consciousness fashion. Well, these ideas seem to be coming to their conclusion. Now, I'll wrap them up and add them in with the others now. All for now, Greg. Till then, I've awoken this morning and gotten some reading done and had some breakfast and have situated myself here on this bed to write, or at least to get a few thoughts down, somewhat to orient myself unto the grain which the paper is made of. This will put me in relation to this morning in the best way I know how. Writing like this will usually find a way onto my pages if I'm receptive and patient enough to wait on it. And then I'll be in the best position to make a trip over to the main office after I get these medicines. It's good to see this work come through when I'm under pressure. It means that my better half has owned her mark. I remember so vividly what it's like to feel so alone, with no way to alleviate my pain, except by doping myself with chemicals. At any rate, I'll be glad to get on the road this morning. Another mostly sunny day is in store for us today. Road trips aren't so bad when the weather's good. At any rate, we'll each have our meeting with our team and get back to our apartments, hopefully in time for an afternoon snack. A thermos of ice cube water is very good when you're hot and tired. I'm just passing the time until then by getting down these thoughts into this smart device's word processor while we're at the doctor's office, and take care of this. Today is the 4th Tuesday in July, this year. This might be the hottest time of the summer, for us. Our waiting line is dwindling, and then we'll get started back. We're indoors. Riding over here, the lunch hour traffic was busy. It should be less now. If we can get away ahead of the 5 o'clock traffic, that will be good, and we can get home. At any rate, our air conditioning is also good, at home. But I've always just liked wearing layers, as I recently wrote of. This is nothing new for me. I remember how, back in high school, I would be so chilly all of the time, in the summer, due to my dissatisfaction with the air conditioning. Only later learning that hurting skin, and feeling cold, are two symptoms of a deficient thyroid. There's a kind of meditation I've seen recently that uses an incrementally focused appreciation of the ground surface, for instance, in my mind, as having slight but perceptible subtle swells, NDITs, and closely noticing the subtle variances in the elevation of the ground surface. I guess that any focusing meditation can somewhat help lessen the throbbing pain of migraines. Another really good one, from just recently, is in seeing one's hands and arms upstretching past the sides of one's head, and in seeing this, also seeing them thread the needle, figuratively speaking, which, you can imagine, might be the only passageway upward. It might be very small, indeed, but imagine oneself putting hands and arms up through this narrow aperture. When I can successfully do this exercise, my migraine will have passed behind, and I'll be free of pain. Mental pain in my day-to-day living can be quite acute. Such usually takes the form of migraines. I don't usually have any other pains. In the decade of my 20s, I was in almost constant pain. I would self-medicate this pain in any way I knew how, every chance I got, so I almost never got really clean. For approximately 10 years. Today I can't put thoughts of pain almost completely away. But it's true, how any new creative, or artistic goal, or acquisition may require dues paying along the way. These problems the world has are the types of things that make men self-medicate, with alcohol, and street drugs. And I'll see or hear of some every day that fall for that outcome. With such a degree of spiritual consciousness, drinking alcohol is sometimes destructive, and not a few have gotten into serious trouble. There's no easy answer, other than recognizing this trouble, and getting oneself in a monastery, or convent. Those that don't marry, or find a long-term mate, will sometimes have trouble with loneliness, or else will be trying to find a home in a group, boarding, or foster home group, in the mental health care system, or might be in and out of the hospital psych ward. Some, who have mobility issues, manage to get themselves into assisted living, and they might stay sober there. At any rate, you see, I've thought about my own troubles enough to know them by now. At home, and it's after our dinner, and I sit and try and get some thoughts into this word processor memory. I'm listening to a great hypnotic dumb ambient CD on my optical Victrola, and occasionally looking out across the room through my window up at the pines in front of the adjacent house, and watching the mellow light, as the spinning of our Earth on its axis makes the sun appear to go on around the planet to the west. These good ideas are going into the last of my latest audiobook chapter, part 6. I was thinking, and am still thinking, of a poet, I can't remember her name, but one of the things she said, was, death is a perplexing thing, because, when one dies, it doesn't seem to be what you thought it was. Also, she wrote, death is what happens, right before the wind stops blowing. I tried but couldn't find her name. Anyways, these two observations, I thought, were complementary in such a way, that my mind tended to, against the strict conventions as to how we should see, somewhat get a good glimpse, into a hoped for, longed for possibility. What would you like to see being there? At any rate, I'm just putting these thoughts down so that they will remain on some media for longer than the thoughts might would of themselves. I'll never really forget this poet's words, and how I thought they revealed something. I saw another posting earlier this evening, which went like, something is everywhere. It's the environment, silly. How would you like to be outside of this plane of existence, as in Edwin Abbott's story about Flatland? The squares, and triangles, and circles had always seen themselves as only a horizontal line, of varying length. Mr. Abbott painted a picture, in words, now, of how, one particular shape left the ground and floated up into the air, and could suddenly see. We're more than just horizontal lines. Each individual is a geometric form. The shape could see squares, and circles and triangles moving about down below, and so he at last understood. He said, we're more than just horizontal lines of differing length. I understand now that each of us is a being with volume and area. Well, these have just been a few thoughts. Our sunset out through this bedroom window is at its suffused luminous orange dusk, quickly dropping off into the dark of night. I've seen trees, and the atmosphere as conscious, awake presences for so long. Now, when everything is just right, and there's a good quality between inside and outside, the mind makes a quantum leap to hyperspace, and all of the world is filled with this space. Space fills it all as a shimmering, crystalline conscious being. Well, I'd better wrap these words up, and get along toward my last meeting for the day. I'll get my bedtime medicines, and return, and work on this writing some more, until I can get to sleep for the night. Well, I hope you have a great downhill stretch, after midday tomorrow, and into a pleasant weekend. Well, all for now. I'll send these words along your way now. Greg.